Hello ladies and gentlemen. Throughout recent history, a lot of us have been enjoying the benefits of the digital age, such as video gaming, emails, and all that jazz. However, what happens when that goes wrong? When something becomes eerie or something doesn't work the way it's supposed to? Sometimes you can attribute this to a glitch or some sort of hack. However, they terrify us nonetheless. The reason for this is that when you feel helpless or something is out of your control, you can all the time just feel overwhelmed, nervous, and that leads to a feeling of genuine fear. However, what happens when something isn't supposed to scare you but does? Well, we're about to recant some tales. These are 3 terrifying gaming stories. I know this might be a weird question, but is there any video game you can honestly say changed your life? If you ask me, the answer would be, yeah, there is one. It was the summer of 2007, I think. My best friend went on holiday to Croatia with his parents, so I, personally, was just bored to death. While I was reading some gaming magazines, I found a preview of a game called Stalker: Oblivion Lost. The preview promised sophisticated AI, realistic graphics, intense fights with both mutants and human opponents, as well as multiple endings. It immediately hyped me for said game, and I couldn't wait to get playing it. I googled the title and found out that the game was renamed as Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl and had been released several months earlier. Without wasting any time, I downloaded a pirated version. I was amazed by the game's atmosphere. I never had felt so immersed in any video game before. Graphics and gameplay were also great, but it was the atmosphere that kept me playing. There's a chance you've never heard of Stalker, but I'm not surprised. Despite achieving almost a cult status in Central and Eastern Europe, it remained relatively obscure in the West, mostly due to being a PC exclusive as well as a ton of bugs and glitches. But hey, Bethesda's done much worse. The game is an open-world FPS developed by a Ukrainian studio called GSC Game World. Stalker is set around Chernobyl nuclear power plant. After a fictional second explosion in the power plant, a surrounding area, called the Zone, became full of dangerous mutants, deadly anomalies that defy the laws of physics, mind you, and dangerous and mysterious artifacts, which drew the attention of illegal treasure hunters called Stalkers. Anyways, I was so impressed by the game, I bought a original copy, even though I've been using a only pirated version before. After the release of the following games from the game series, Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat, I bought them immediately. I became interested in paintball and ASG after that as well. There's so many abandoned buildings in my neighborhood, so I was able to recreate the atmosphere of some of the gunfights in the game. I started to learn the Russian language, the language used in the gaming series, and I speak it quite fluent right now. Hell, I even went to a tour of Chernobyl, and if you want to know, I'm perfectly fine. So yeah, this may sound cheesy, but I'm sure that I would be a whole different person if I never played Stalker. A few months ago, I was digging through one of the old Russian forums for Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl, and I wanted to see if there are any cool mods. I found one topic called Horror of Chernobyl. It was posted only several minutes ago, and no one replied to it yet. The post itself contained only a link to a .torrent file. No description, no screenshots, no list of features. Mysterious mod? Well, let's see what secrets it contains. I downloaded it and I installed it. When I ran the game, everything started as usual. Intro with a truck full of corpses, lighting striking the truck, and a stalker carrying a sole survivor. The protagonist, called the Mark I, to Trader's Bunker, and a message stating, "Kill the Strelok" on your PDA. The first task seems to be unaltered either. I begun to wonder what, if any, changes had the mod brought, since there was really no readme file. Gradually, I started to notice some differences. The nights, previously looking more like late evening, were now pitch black. Also, more mutants were spawning after dusk, so leaving camps at night was a very intense experience. Some new side quests were also added, mostly revolving around some creepy places like X Labs, Yantar Factory, and Bloodsucker's Village in the army warehouses. For instance, one such side mission has a player obtaining a flash drive from a warehouse in Wild Territory. There are, however, several dead bodies. After finding a flash drive hidden in a backpack, the corpses come back to life as zombies and attack the player. I was really impressed by the mod's creator idea. It was genuinely creepy, but there was one more thing that was disturbing as hell. It was after several hours of gaming, I was making my walk through some open area. I think it was the Dark Valley, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, I saw something in the corner of my field view. I saw what appeared to be a ghostly figure standing on top of a small hill. I faced the direction and I saw the mysterious thing, but there was nothing. I went on that hill and carefully scanned it with binoculars, but without any effect. I thought I was seeing things, and at the time, I simply ignored it. A few hours later, the situation repeated. Weird shapes in the corner of my eye, which disappeared after only a second. I decided to check back on the forum where I found a mod, whether any other player had similar experiences. The thread with the mod on it was, however, locked only a few minutes after I originally started downloading the folder, without any reply. One of the moderators deleted the download link and added a sarcastic note stating, "Luke used template," without a link to a thread labeled. How to post mods properly? Without any help from any other users, I decided to solve the mystery myself, and I continued to play. As I thought, there must be some sort of explanation somewhere. I began to explore every inch of the game and doing every mission, but I hadn't found anything. I decided to continue with the main storyline. I had to meet a character called Dr. Agropalm underground. I reached a location and everything seemed normal. Explosion while going up a ladder and a doctor monologue explaining that the Marked One is in fact Sturlock, a man the player was hunting the entire game. Suddenly, when the doctor's speech was over, the Mark One, Sherlock, pulled out a grenade, removed the safety pin, and released the lever. While still holding the grenade in his hands, just before it was supposed to explode, the screen went black and the game crashed. I was confused about what happened, but at the same time, I had a hunch I was on the right track. I decided to try that part again. I assumed that the game crashed because it encountered a fatal error. Dealing with bugs and crashes, especially after modding the game, it's just part of Stalker. When I clicked load game, I noticed a new save file was on the top of the list. It had no name. It just showed ... I decided to load this particular file. The most recent one, the loading screen, lacked the location or screenshot of anything. Instead, it was just an X. When the map loaded, the character was just standing in some straight, dark corridor. It looked similar to the underground laboratories from the game. I noticed I had no weapon, armor, or any other equipment, as there was no other way I probably could have gotten it. I proceeded through the corridor. Suddenly, about 20 meters away, some figure crossed my way, disappearing in the wall. It was the ghost I had seen earlier. I rushed after the figure and found a door leading to a small, well-lit room. There were several documents inside describing some very disturbing stuff, and I'll read it for you now. I feel sick. They said it was just fire, but I don't believe it. It must be something more. I saw my colleagues falling on the ground dead. I was glad I survived, but at least they don't have to go through this. High fever, vomiting blood, diarrhea. They said I would feel better, but I know I'll die soon. Document 2. Papa said something bad might happen, and we have to go. He didn't say when we'll be back. I saw other children leaving the town. I hope we'll be back soon. Document 3. Lena was so happy. She would be with her mother soon. But what happened to the baby? Half the child's face is covered this tumor-like thing. Document 4. Gone are the homes, the gardens, the playgrounds. Gone are the souls that made their livings here. I recognize the last words. It was an extract from the song about the Chernobyl disaster called Ghost Town. I exited the room and found myself in a huge underground location. Ghastly silhouettes of people of all ages, sexes were walking, talking to each other without making any sound. It looked like a peaceful town, albeit inhabited by shadows. Suddenly, an alarm siren was heard. Most of the ghosts started to run away. Others began to attack the invisible enemy. One of the silhouettes fell to the ground without anything more. Others tried to escape, but it tripped. It got on its knees and holding its stomach. It seems it was vomiting. Finally, the room was empty. All of the ghosts either fled or were lying on the ground. The screen faded to black and there was a text appearing stating, "Thank you for playing the greatest game, Stalker. Without suffering of the dead. Wounded, deported, this series would never be crashed. Victims of the Chernobyl disaster." That was the last time I ever played the Stalker games. Not because I was afraid of some haunted game. I don't believe in all that paranormal shit. And I'm pretty sure it's just a work of some modder. I'm thinking of going back to the series several times, but I have this strange feeling. As if I was playing a game about someone's funeral, and it's just really fucked up. I heard rumors about a video game console released in the early 90s that promised the most immersive games imaginable. It bore a strong resemblance to Super Nintendo, except it had no cartridge slot, no reset button, and only one controller port. It was released in extremely low quantity, and it's possible that less than 50 were ever available. People I talked to who actually remember it from their childhood only mentioned the first game on the list of other games that were included with the console, but this one was, well, what they would say, the perfect game. Lifelike graphics, sound, and even by today's standards, it was some of the best shit that they've ever seen. An endless supply of new, fun content and solid gameplay. The controls were responsive, and you get the picture. And the single controller port, that was all that was necessary. The NPCs in the game were smart enough to be entertaining like real players, apparently. It was quite literally a game nobody wanted to stop playing, and the people who I interviewed all remarked somewhat bitterly that their parents forcibly dragged them away from the television set after a few days of continuous playing, and then threw the console in the trash. I was intrigued by what I knew so far, so I went looking for some people who remembered this relic from gaming history. I searched low and I searched for high for any people, besides the handful that I've already talked to. After a month of painstaking investigation, I found 2 independent accounts. They had a much harder time remembering the specifics of the console, but I was able to jog their memory by repeating what I had in my notes. I could see their eyes light up a little, remembering that perfect game, but both of them said that's not all it could do. Both of them said that the interface was complete, and I inquired what exactly they meant by complete. After a few days, apparently the game started having a positive psychological effect. It was as if the actions done in game were giving the player exercise, and the player was able to go without food or water, seemingly drawing substance through the items collected in the levels. I thought that was a little far-fetched. Maybe they're remembering it wrong. However, after a couple days, they had played the game continuously, for a week at that point, they started feeling damage done to their in-game character. The pain was small at first, and only slightly forceful reminder. After a while though, the pain started getting more intense, and the weirdness of the constant action was taking their toll on them. The game was still perfect. It was better than any high you can imagine, one of them said. But it was becoming physically exhausting to play, and they couldn't tear themselves away from it. I was almost done with one level, and I was fighting a boss that used a whip, one interviewer said. I remember the whip. It was like a one-hit, one-kill. I had to start to level over, but I remembered the searing pain where it lashed across my arm. He then unbuttoned his sleeve shirt, and I could see a scar twisting around his arm. Yeah, it was getting that bad. Both of them said that their parents returned to the house after 9 days into the marathon of the gaming session and forcibly dragged them away from the console and took them to the emergency room. The console was gone when they came back home, thrown away like the others, I'd assume. I could not find any other people who even knew what I was talking about. The rumors stopped there, and I was left with a incomplete knowledge about where I could find one of these consoles. A sense of dread settled back into my mind, though I felt it was necessary to pour through the newspaper archives from that period. I was trying all sorts of variations of bootleg consoles, online database searches, and then I finally stumbled upon what was shocking. There were 15 separate incidents of people found dead in their homes sitting in front of their TVs with a bootleg-looking console hooked up to it. They had a butchered appearance, most commonly found in strange places, and the autopsy revealed that their internal organs had literally dissolved. One of the articles remarked that the TV was displaying static, and they could not get the console to power on. Local officials tried contacting the manufacturer of the console, but the owner's manual and the information on the sticker on the back of the console both referenced an address that led to a site of a warehouse that was demolished over 80 years ago. Possibly due to a wrong print, right? I go to a small community college in Arizona. I've been working on my digital imagery and video production certificate for about 2 semesters now. The college allows me to go in and put some extra hours of work on my videos before releasing them and displaying them in a small art gallery across the art department. Not to mention that I also get to work there after classes as well. Our campus is out on the highway about 10 miles from my town, very isolated and gloomy most days. The college is surrounded by desert and tall mountains. The college decided to move the art building closer to other classrooms since we are in a solitary building that takes a while to walk to. They gutted the small building and left the digital photography and video production classrooms for last. One night after I finished my shift at work, I decided to work on one of my videos since it was due in the following week. We use a pretty high-end Mac computers, but I had always noticed a small Mac that was hidden in the back of the closet. Since my supervisor had gone home, I decided to hook the little sucker up and see if there was anything interesting on it. I plugged it in, and it took a while to boot up because it appeared to be a little bit older than the other computers. Finally, the welcome screen showed up. There were 2 accounts, one read instructor, one read student. That's when I logged into the student account and I skimmed through the various student pictures as I noticed that they were all the same. Each of them had the same man in the same background, a balding middle-aged male. His eyes were as blue as a picture of a nebula. His grin in every single one of the pictures were as wide as his eyes and seemed to gaze into my soul. At the end of the long list of pictures I found a .mov file. It was titled crawl.mov. Since it was around 8 at night, I started getting uncomfortable. The name of the file already made my heart beat fast. I wanted to watch it, but I knew I was going to regret it. I called my friend to pick me up since I was 10 miles away from town, and the buses never seemed to run this late. I had about 15 minutes before my friend actually arrived to take me home, so I decided to click on the file, and it opened up a QuickTime. My hands were clammy and my eyes darted across the text, faded out and in and out, and it quickly cut to a shot of a desert at night. I could hear there were footsteps on the gravel, and bushes and weeds were being swatted out of someone's way. I began to feel relieved, and I assured myself that it was just a student edit. I laughed as I remembered myself being scared to even open the file. I looked down at my phone and checked for new notifications as the video played. I looked up and stopped as my jaw dropped open. What I saw was gruesome and horrifying. A man covered in blood, and this wasn't like that fake orangey blood that you would usually get in the 90s. No. This stuff looked actually real, and he was the exact same man in the picture I'd seen only a couple of minutes ago. The shot was only his face at the beginning, but soon panned out to reveal him sawing through what looked to be bone. His smile was still painted across his face. The camera zoomed out, and there she was, a petite brunette. Her eyes were wide with fear as the man was sawing through her leg. I cupped my hands over my mouth as I tried to convince myself that was a video. It was an edit, it was special effects, but god damn it, it looked really damn real. The footage was so raw, and it showed no signs of being played with whatsoever. All there was through the whole video was silence. The look on the girl's face, to this day, I still can't forget. About 5 minutes passed by, and it finally cut to black. I leaned back into my chair, thinking to myself, what the fuck did I just see? All of a sudden, I started hearing noises, and the screen was still black, but I remembered that I hadn't lowered the volume. Suddenly, but surely, I started making out little whispers. It was the girl. I hovered over the time bar to see if the video was still going, and it had 5 more minutes left. The whispers grew louder and louder. The black seemed to be growing lighter and lighter, until finally a dirt road came into focus. The girl was thrown into the middle of the road, shivering, twitching, but still alive. Both of her legs were fucking missing. There was chanting in the background behind the camera, and it got louder and louder. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but Jesus fuck, it was creepy and in some other language I could not understand. It was a man's voice. I gritted my teeth as I was growing more nervous by the second. The chanting stopped. Then he began to whistle, like he was trying to get the girl's attention, like a person would to a dog. Then he said, "Come here, girl. You can do it. Just crawl." The girl looked straight into the camera. Her eyes were bloodshot, distorted. They sure as hell did not look human to me. She turned herself onto her stomach, lifted her hands above her head, and started to pull her body towards the camera. This sinister grin started to grow on her lips. The skin on her face was pale, bruised, cut up, and all you could hear was her body and the dirt below her. Slowly, making her way closer and closer, she finally reached the foot of the man's feet. She had left behind a small trail of blood. She then looked up and shrieked. I never in my life heard such a terrible, blood-curdling sound in my life. Sort of like a pig squealing and a baby crying. I quickly unplugged the computer, put it back in its place, closed up the room, sprinted outside as I pushed the door to my building open. My friend rolled up into the parking lot, and I got in as fast as I could. I could hardly speak on the way home, but I did make sure to thank him for the ride. The next morning, I told my supervisor about what was on the video that I had seen. He laughed, and this was his exact words. So, who told you the ghost story? I told him that I could show it where it was, and I pulled the computer out of the closet and plugged it in. I tried the power button, but nothing happened. He then proceeded to tell me that the computer had been broken for a long time, and it was just sitting there for a couple of years now. He said that there's a ghost story going around college about a girl from the dorms who had been kidnapping and dragging people out into the desert. Her legs are cut off, and she was offered a sacrifice to some sort of deity. My supervisor also added, some people say that they can hear whistling in the desert and people calling for someone to crawl or something like that. Like, you know, come here, girl, crawl. You can do it. But I think that's just a load of bullshit.